US, Australia, New Zealand, Scotland, Ireland, Her Majesty, SOS. We've got dubious and very suspicious groups that are infiltrating all of our native tribes in our Anglo countries, in our Commonwealth countries. And what they're doing is getting the tribes people separated into groups, getting them to go against the Commonwealth, getting them to give up their lands, getting them to sign up to the United Nations indigenous rights, where I'm told that some of the tribes people have actually signed their lands over to the United Nations as being the instrument holders to protect their lands. Now, this is a really, we don't have all the information, but one of the people that's been working on this is Sue Gray. Sue Gray. And Sue Gray, we are going to expose you. Now, some of the people that I'm exposing are innocent people. That we can all remember Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff had tricked, I remember that there was one country that had invested their entire country's retirement fund with Bernie Madoff, and they lost everything. The whole country had to start again. Well, this is a similar thing that is happening now. Many of our native chiefs have been deceived, and they've been tricked into signing documents in regards to their tribes and in regards to their lands. And many of them, I'm just saying to you that even though we're going to go through today and show you a few things about what's going on, we don't have to go hating on the people that have been deceived into all of this. The people that are doing these deceptions, just like Bernie Madoff, are absolutely so convincing. They've got all the papers, they've got all the seals, they've got all the information. This stuff was put together by extremely clever people that have got university degrees. Some of them are practicing lawyers. Some of them have been working in universities. I mean, these people are very, very clever people, and they're hanging around our tribes, and they're hanging around in the rural areas. They go to areas where they know that they can find people that don't have much access to the internet, or perhaps don't really are not that interested in researching, but are happy to go along to the events. So currently we're exposing Sue Gray. What has Sue Gray been doing for the last 2 decades in New Zealand? She has been picking up several cases around New Zealand, using the United Nations human rights laws and infusing the case studies, the precedent, placing precedent through our courts. Now, what happens with the precedent is that the United Nations law is non-binding, and the way that they're trying to make it binding is through New Zealand and through New Zealand courts by Sue Gray, the Trojan horse. Now, what happens is when you have a law that's non-binding, like the human rights of the United Nations, you need precedent. And what they need is to have many, many, many cases filed through the New Zealand courts, and they even want to have cases that lose in the New Zealand courts and then in Australian courts, and then they want it to be sent out to various different organisations that are outside of New Zealand, like the United Nations and their international courts. And then they want to have it put into there, and this is how they create their precedent. They deliberately create situations that are going to bring these cases into court using their laws, and then they create precedent for judges to work against. A case is no good in the court if they don't have the precedent. And this is what all of these organisations are about. Now, today we're going to look at some of these fake. Well, these courts of justice, these natural courts of justice, they used to have them in England pre-1688, and it was usually done by the Exchequer Jews, the barons, and the Catholic Church. And they had all these natural ecclesiastical courts of justice, and there was no precedent. They could just choose the punishment as they felt. And this is what these courts of justice are trying to bring back. They don't want you to be in our proper courts. They want you to go out into their courts where the decisions are arbitrary. They're very loosely put together. One of the targets of these has been Her Majesty the Queen. There have been many targets, but I think that Her Majesty the Queen was a target where they had a courts of justice over graves that were at the Catholic schools, where back in those times, 300 years ago, when children died, they used to bury them in the grounds of the school. That's just how they did things back then. And so what they did is they had these graves dug up, and then they set up this international courts of justice, and they accused the Queen of all sorts of things of which there was no evidence. Well, Sir Grey, some of them that we've got going at the moment is the International Tribunal of Natural Justice. This is the one that we're going to be investigating today. Another one is the Ariki Nui Kawenata Marish Crown. Now, all of these people usually use names like crowns or barons or anything to do with the natural law they're using, and people are falling for it hook, line, and sinker. I don't fucking fall for it, but they're all falling for it. And people are buying their products. People are purchasing these dubious birth certificates. And one of the things that they are doing is collecting ancestry records of all of the native people in our country, specifically New Zealand Maori, Australian Aboriginals. They're specifically looking for any that have got a bloodline that came from a chief. And they're taking the names. Now, I have been told that they're exchanging birth certificates. They're asking for the original birth certificate, and they're handing back a different birth certificate with a new birth date on it 6 months out from the original. I don't know what's going on there, but there are things going on, and we're going to be looking at Sir Grey. Another one is called Purple Thumb. Another one is called Kohui Arau. Kohui Arau have just blocked me from their channel because I've been getting too close to what they're up to. Te Moana Nui Akiwa, Monica Eastwood, she's working all through the Pacific Islands and all in the islanders and the refugees in the North Island of New Zealand. There's a new one that I've just discovered, Te Manawa, Deborah Ann Potrons, who's just claimed a block of land from a New Zealand Maori family. I don't know how she's managed. The man says in 2013, his family's name was on the land deed. In 2017, his family's name had been removed from the land deed. And she had just turned up and knocked on his door one day. She bought the neighbouring property. There's a lot of stuff going on. We've got the Maori Rangers, which are also run by Monica Eastwood, another guy. They're selling these little cards, which we're going to do a video on the cards, but I haven't got round to it. People are buying these cards for $50, $25, $50. Any paperwork, they're telling you to fill out this paperwork, and you're paying for the paperwork, and it's just all part of a huge worldwide scam. Everyone, you've got to be careful out there where you're sending your money. We've got the Kingdom of God, we've got the Maori Nation. They're all just, in my opinion, they all come from one source. Now, I don't know if the Mormon Church has got anything to do with this, but I will say that allegedly they are well known for forging documents and being involved with documents and fake documents and many things like that. They are well known. And we do know that all the islands have been overwhelmed by them, and we do know that our parliament has been usurped by several members of the Mormon cult. I'm going to call them cult. So Sue Gray, I'll try and get this short. So if you want to know what to Google, because people are asking me, Kate Floss, where's your sources? So if you want to know to Google, I've tried to put these big red bits at the top here. And you just go and Google that, and then you can go and read about it yourself if you're interested, or you can just take the general outline from me and get the picture of what's going on and know that you've got to be careful out there. You cannot trust any of these organisations. There were 3 aerial drops of a thing called 1080 in New Zealand. And strangely enough, because in my conspiracy theory, the government and the United Nations know exactly what they're doing, and I, in my conspiracy theory, think that they are setting it all up. They're deliberately setting up situations to send these cases through the courts to create their precedent, is what I'm thinking. Now, although I really could be wrong, but I'm thinking that they're working towards instituting United Nations laws into all of our Commonwealth countries and transferring all of the native lands from the instrument of the Majesty and into the instrument of the United Nations. That's what I'm thinking, where they're going, why they're so interested in the tribes of our countries. But anyway, the case, Sir Gray took the case to the High Court using the United Nations human rights laws and the Nuremberg Code, which is not part of New Zealand law. They're trying to get the Nuremberg Code, which is a Jewish law, and it's never been instituted into Commonwealth countries because we've got our own protections. And this is actually a Jewish law, and it's got some things in there that I don't think that we want in our country, but I'm not sure what. So she's been citing Nuremberg Code, human rights, 1990 New Zealand Not Bill of Rights. She's been citing the United Nations charters and various other non-binding laws into our New Zealand courts. And she lost the case, but whether she loses the case or not is irrelevant, because sometimes they want them to lose the case so that Sue Gray will take it outside to get precedent in the international courts. This, in my opinion, this is deliberately being done, I think. And anyway, when she went to the court 3 times and she lost. And eventually at the Supreme Court she was denied, and then she was ordered to pay $70,000 in legal costs. Now, the Brook Waimarama Sanctuary has said after the dropping of the 1080, the year following it, it eliminated all of the rodents, all of the stoats, and all of the introduced animals that were killing off the native species. And they were saying that there is a 400% increase in the number of tui and bellbirds, fantails and tomtits, which are all indigenous species to New Zealand. So Sue Gray, after she lost all of these cases, She then went to a court called the International Tribunal of Natural Justice. Now, this is not the only one of these courts. There are several of these courts. One of them's to do with children. One of them's to do with prosecuting the majesty. There are several of these courts, but we're just going to choose you one and show you the people involved and show you what they're doing. And when you see these activities going on, you can decide for yourself if they're legitimate or not. So I'm not even saying that this one is not legitimate. I'm just going to show you what people are sending me, actually. I'm not even finding it. People are sending it. So here you can see the International Judicial Commission of Inquiry into the Weaponization of the Biosphere. And this, you can see down here, it is called the International Tribunal for the Natural Justice. And these are the judges, but there are several of these courts. These are only the judges for this particular case that Sue Gray went to. But there are other cases and other courts, and the courts have various different names. So some of them have the rights of children. They have different names, but this one was the Natural Justice Court. And what you can, so there's the judges there. And then if you look over here, you can see there is this young lady there who I don't know who she is. There's Sue Gray, and I don't know who this lady is. If anybody knows who this lady is here, you can let me know. And here they all are, 1, 2, 3, sitting with the International Courts of Justice. This is a fly-by-the-way video, and it's not very well organised. I realise that. I am an amateur. I am an amateur YouTuber, and I'm just doing my best to get the information out. There's so much information. We're just trying to get it out as fast as we can, as best as we can, as accurately as we can. But the whole world is in chaos due to these organisations, and I think that they are a deliberate assault to bring down the Commonwealth. That's what I'm believing. They're bringing down the Commonwealth. Now, this was another one, the International Natural Justice Judicial Commission for the Inquiry into Human Trafficking and the Child Sex Abuse. And this was another kangaroo court. I don't know what they call them, kangaroo court. And you see this guy here is called the presiding judge, and his name is Sir John Walsh of Branagh. And he had named himself a French king, a Russian Tsar, and I'm going to tell you all about him in just a minute. There is this priest here, the Bishop Ria Abu el-Assal, a Palestinian Israeli man. And some of these ones are in this case, but I didn't investigate this case. This is another case, so I'm not investigating, but just these two, John Walsh and Ria Abu el-Assal, seem to be in all of the courts. Some of the other ones are not. Now, the founding members of this court apparently are this man here called Sasha Stone. And I'm going to show you about Sasha Stone in a minute. There's Sasha Stone, and here is John Walsh, and here I think this is, I'll get to him in a minute. Here is a man called Ciro Orsini. Now, Ciro Orsini, if he is truly from that family, comes from an Italian mafia family. I really can't find much on him, but he is, he is right in there with all of Hollywood. He's an actor, he's a producer, he's shaking hands with presidents. And here you see the priest here. And this man, this is here is Ciro Orsini. And here over on the right, you can see Sue Gray, and I think this is John Walsh. And then this man here, if you see this man here, I can't remember his name, but I'm going to tell you about him later. But he was convicted and did go to prison for setting up Ponzi schemes. Ponzi schemes. This is no different from the Bernie Madoff scandal. It's no different. There are hundreds of people involved in this from the highest levels of society. They are through the governments, they are through all of our tribes, and they are causing absolute chaos in the Commonwealth. That's what they're after, the Commonwealth, in my opinion. Now, you can see here, I don't know if you can see this picture, but I'll try and make it a bit bigger for you. Right, so here, I'll make it a bit bigger. Can you see that? So here is Sue Gray again, and then this guy here is called Robert Young. Now, he was a fake doctor, and he did actually go to prison for practicing illegal medical practices, is what he was practicing. I'll just try and make this bigger on the screen. I hope everybody can see it in the video. So, and then here you see John Young, and then you see this guy here, John Brannigan, whatever his name is. What's his name again? John Walsh, sorry. Right, so here's John Walsh, here's Robert Young, here is Sue Gray, here's the preacher man, and this over here, I suspect is, it looks a bit like Sasha Stone. I think it is Sasha Stone. And here is Ciro Orsini, and he is a promoter of crowdfunding, and he collects money, supposedly, on behalf of refugees and various people like this caliber over here. So these people are very involved with this kind of thing, I suspect. All right, that's all I'm going to say about that. And then here he is, standing here. Is that Boris Johnson that I see here? And here he is standing here. And is that Bill Clinton? Now, I do know that this guy here does go to the highest parties with the highest movie stars. We all know that sometimes these pictures are cut and pasted, and you can't really quite know if they have been cut and pasted. I might be a little bit suspicious of this picture here, because this is a black tie event and they're all wearing black ties, and he's coming here with his shirt undone and all of his things hanging out. And I'm wondering if he would have even been allowed in there if this were true. So I can't say that I really cannot say that these pictures are true, but these are just some pictures that I found of him. Now, Sasha Stone says, "Arise Homo sapiens," a conversation with Sasha Stone and the Homo sapiens that we have here. Now, Sasha Stone is in deep contact with Ricardo Bossi. Now, let's all remember, whenever we're talking about, we'll see if I can never find my stick people when I need them, but whenever we're talking about Ricardo Bossi, who arrived, he arrived he arrived in Australia when he was 7 years old. So Ricardo Bosi can pretty much be equated with our Jacinda Ardern problem, and the Ardern problem, and the Russell M. Nelson problem. So if you when you think of Ricardo, when you're thinking of Ricardo Bosi, I want you to think Jacinda Ardern, and I want you to think Russell M. Nelson, who have decided to join together with the Islamic faith against the Protestant people, I imagine. So they're all in on that. So think about that next time when you're thinking about voting for Ricardo Bosi, which is another person that is not born to Australia. Now let's get moving on to John Walsh and see what we found out about John Walsh, who is the founder. So Sasha Stone is also, they're both founders actually. Sasha Stone founded the International Tribunal for Natural Justice, an organisation which stages court-like hearings indicating applying the principle of the natural law to matters of current affairs. And the ITNJ has featured discredited individuals who have subsequently used it as a forum for making false or misleading statements. Now here it goes here. ITNJ, International Tribunal of Natural Justice hearings are chaired by John Walsh of Branagh, and he is a lawyer that was disbarred from his practice in Victoria, Australia. Now, there's 2 prosecutions against this guy, not one. The first one is that, yes, he was a lawyer, and yes, he was disbarred. And he was disbarred from his practice in Victoria, Australia. Now, not only was he disbarred from that, he also was a chancellor of Greenwich, I've spelled it wrong, of Greenwich University, which is an accredited university, unaccredited university formerly of Norfolk Island in Victoria. Now, what this guy has been doing is, wow, can you say it's legal? He had set up this education system online where you could obtain degrees, which he was telling people were accredited by the Australian qualification of teachers. And in fact, these degrees were not accredited, and they were worthless pieces of paper. People were buying them online. Well, the people that bought these degrees are just as guilty, because they must have known the work that they were doing was substandard, and they were getting degrees for work that they didn't do. And some of the degrees that they were giving is degrees in journalism. And you do have to wonder, I'm not saying anything, but you do wonder if Chris Farfoy got his degree in journalism, or if any of our members of parliament got their degrees from the Greenwich Fate University. You do have to wonder, don't you? Jacinda Ardern, I wonder where you got your degree from, Jacinda Ardern. We don't know. But anyway, Robert Young, also, that I just showed you before when I showed you in the picture up here, where you see this guy here, Robert Young, he was jailed illegally for practicing medicine. And the photo where you see him and Sue Gray standing together, apparently he had just gotten out of prison, and Sue Gray had gone to meet them. Now, New Zealand, how do they get credibility? what is the way that they get credibility? Well, they take their cases through our genuine court systems. That's what they do. They really don't care if they win or lose. In fact, sometimes they're hoping that they lose. When they lose their cases, they get legitimacy as being a legitimate and credible lawyer. And then they use that and they take that to these quasi set up courts that are put together outside in the natural justice outside of the genuine courts of law. And it's causing a lot of confusion for people. Now, the AQF, the Australian Qualified something, the committee has recommended that the Greenwich University not be listed on the registers of the Australian Qualifications Framework because the standard of its courses, the quality, and academic leadership fail to meet the standards. And according to Senator Carr, an American senator, because the Vice Chancellor was American, and I'm not sure what country actually John Walsh comes from. I really don't actually know. Probably Australia, but he could have travelled to Australia and got his citizenship. So he might even be an American actually. So according to Senator Carr, Mr. Walsh appointed a convicted fraudster, Dr. Ian McKechnie, as the Vice Chancellor of the institution while he assumed the role of the Chancellor. And the university is the sort which grants master's or doctoral degrees for an estimated 1,000 distance learning at $10,000 a pop. And he says, it's nice work if you get it. So, how much? I'm just got a high school education, so I'm not skiting that I'm a university scholar. I've got a high school education, which you can see by my crappy slides, can't you? But a university degree is going to cost you, it's going to take you 4 years in your field, and you need to, it's going to take you 4 years to get the university degree, 2 years for a master's degree. He was granting master's degree and doctorate degrees. And doctor at $10,000. Now it's 2 years, and he's reckoning that it's $5,000 a year. I don't think so. I don't think you can get a degree for that cheap, to be honest. But he was collecting $10,000 a pop. That's what they were saying. And he called himself a duke, and the senator was laughing and called him a duke on the dole, the duke on the benefit system. So this is how they were getting their money. Now, here's what it says. Now, you can go and Google Dr. Ian Murray McKechnie if you want to find out about these cases, and you can also Google John Walsh, and you will be able to find out about these cases. There's so much on there, it'll take you hours to get through if you can be bothered, but if you're just an amateur like me, you can just have a wee look. And this is what the senator says. Tonight I would like to speak about a subject to which I've been able to offer some views for some 3 years now, and that is the Greenwich University, or an entity. We can say that about our New Zealand Parliament, or an entity known as our New Zealand Parliament, or an entity known as the university and calling itself Greenship. This is a shonky outfit, just like our Parliament, a shonky outfit in New Zealand Parliament and the Waitangi Tribunal. And it set itself up on the Australian territory of Norfolk Island, because they do that. They go to very remote places, set themselves up, and nobody knows what they're up to because people don't realise, and it's all done on the internet, and it can take years to catch these people. And there you've spent all your money, and just like these Maori Ranger cards, you're left standing there with a useless document that you can't do anything with. It's very terrible. Most universities have the view that the Vice-Chancellor occupies an important social standing within the community, but at Greenwich, they take the view that convicted embezzlers should be given a second chance. Now, Dr. M. Mackenzie, he was listed as having secured a doctorate degree in theology through the Southern California Graduate School of Theology, but he was convicted actually in 1993 of the theft of $220,000 from the Brotherhood of St. Lawrence, stealing off the church. And so I think it is unusual to set a set of circumstances when you see that the university puts this man as their vice-chancellor. So what we've got 3 convictions here that all occurred around about the time of 2017, 2018. Sir Grey went to the International Court of Justice, International. You have to get this right because it's very close to another name, because that's what they do. They choose names that are almost identical to actual legitimate courts. And there is a legitimate International Court of Justice. But this one is called the International Tribunal of Natural Justice. So there's only a couple of letters that are not the same. It's very easy to get them confused. But she went to this meeting in 2019. So the Golden State University, here's another one. This is another one that's come from this Ian Murray. He also created the Golden State University on the internet in 2002. And this was registered in the British Virgin Islands, but it was run from his Melbourne home. So basically, in my limited knowledge, McKinchney originally set up one of these schools, selling these degrees online for so many $1,000s. And he was convicted and he was prosecuted. Oh, no, he was not prosecuted. This was another one. Or I don't know if it's the same case or not. He was convicted of stealing $220,000 from the Brotherhood of St. Lawrence. But, I think it's different. And he also had set up a university-style education in the Virgin Islands as well. These are 2 different cases, sorry. After a rather unflattering array of articles published by the Australian newspaper, the contact details for the Australian site vanished. And then what did he do? He ended up going and working with John Walsh for the Greenwich University on Norfolk Island. And then John Walsh, and I'm betting that Ian McKinchney might have been involved as well, and Sasha Stone then went on to set up, when this COVID thing happened, then went on to set up the international, whatever they want to call it. But let's remember that there is also the NZDSOS, and I'm telling you, they are 2 wings of the same bird. They also are setting up, and we don't have I'm just going to throw it out there. It all does seem to keep coming back to the United Nations. It just does. And so I don't know. This is just huge. I mean, it's bigger than Bernie Madoff. Forget about Bernie Madoff. This is way bigger than him. the Vice Chancellor, the convicted, the Senator was laughing. He said, the Vice Chancellor, the convicted embezzler, and the Chancellor who presents himself as the Duke of Bernard, a man who bought the titles to the royal throne of Russia, and he has himself in line to the French throne as well. So he is a man of the distinguished parentage, so he says. They had the minister, the Senator MacDonald, represented a fundamental misunderstanding of his role and was seriously embarrassed by Dr. Kemp because he allowed. So the Senator of Norfolk Island allowed legitimate Australian universities to be undermined in the international arena and allowed Australia's good name of high-quality education to be undermined by the dubious outfit. It says here that it is worth remembering that Greenwich University was hounded out of the United States first. It was refused permission to establish itself in New Zealand. Sue Gray, you're a lawyer, or so you say. I don't even know if you're a lawyer anymore. Maybe Sue Gray got her degree from the University of Greenwich with the royal throne of Russia and the embezzled, convicted embezzler. Maybe Sue Gray got her lawyering degree from the University of Greenwich. Oh, because I have very fucking nose now. I've lost my hat. Well, you wouldn't lose your freaking hat, wouldn't you? I've got a high school education that I'm not ashamed of, to be honest. I tell you, I'm not ashamed with my high school education when people with degrees like this are coming up with this crap and dishing it out to the public. And people like me with a high school education have got to make videos, got to spend hours and hours and hours to make these videos to let the public know what horrible things you're up to. I mean, I'm not ever going to be ashamed of my high school education skills ever again, actually. You can all be proud of yourself if you haven't got a university degree, because this is what people with university degrees, this is what they're doing to the world. And us people with no degrees, we're doing our best to fix the trail of destruction that they leave behind them. John Walsh does have a legitimate legal university degree in law. And he was disbarred. So if this is what the universities are dishing up to us, no thank you anymore. I'd rather have a high school graduate take me through the courts. They were denied in New Zealand, refused in New Zealand in 1993. And then we see that the Norfolk Island Legislative Councillor and our own Senator MacDonald allowed this situation to occur. So all this was closed down. Here is John Walsh standing here. Now, they're very focused on our native people, and they're all through our tribes, and they're really preying on, I won't say uneducated people, but they prey on people that are quite isolated from the outside world. People that are, these evil characters are using the native people's ancient customs to trick them into leaving their protections and trick them into signing many, many, many documents. And in this case, he's calling himself the Chief Justice of the Tribunal, and he actually got to meet the Honourable Julie Bishop, the Foreign Minister for Australia, and Alex Waimari, the Treaty Council of the First Nation people. Now, that I just showed you. Oh dear, it's my phone. Hang on. I'll just have to leave it. I hope you can't hear it. Okay. Sometimes you've got to be a bit careful, because sometimes these characters, they might just go to visit to say, I want to talk about some issue, and then they get the picture. And then when they get the picture, they go and put it on their site, and then they sometimes add a lot of bullshit. So we can't really be accusing, here they're standing with an Aboriginal, but what I'm finding is that the people that are leading our tribes people are a mix of the native tribe and usually an American or a Pacific Islander. They usually have got a mix from an outside country that have mixed into our native tribes. They've got dual loyalties and they're not allegiant to our country. So he said, following the meeting of the Treaty Council this week, our Chief Justice of the International Tribunal for Natural Justice, Sir John Walsh, had the opportunity to meet the Honourable Julie Bishop and the Foreign Minister of Australia. He has been advising, listen up, New Zealand, he has been advising the Treaty Council, which represents the indigenous peoples of Australia. Now, we have got these advisors. Sue Gray has been advising our native Maori people in New Zealand, and she has been getting them to sign all sorts of documents in regards to their lands, secret deals. I really don't know how much damage she's done, but they're getting our indigenous and our native peoples to sign many documents. And the one thing that seems to be screaming out from all these documents is the United Nations law is infused into every single one of them. Now, United Nations law is non-binding law, and once it's in your country and once it's in your national laws, you've got no power over what they do with you. So most countries don't allow United Nations laws to be glued into their national law. It's usually held on a separate document. But what Sir Gray has done, all the documents in regards to our New Zealand native Maori population, all those new documents that she has been instrumental in writing up, she has tagged into it United Nations refugee law. And we're all going to be looking at that very closely now that we know all about you, John Walsh, and your fake university and your embezzling mates and your rip-off mates and your disbarment from the legal council. And now that we know that you're working with the Aboriginal tribes of Australia, and we've got Sue Gray working with the native New Zealand tribes of New Zealand. Yeah, we're coming to look at all of you. The chief, all right, I'm just going to read through a few things and you can just go and see yourself. The Chief Justice was stripped of his ability to practice law. It says late last month we noted, this was 4 years ago, that, well, it's 4 years ago, but it's only in 2019 that Sue Gray went to the International Courts of Justice. So she's recent, okay? It was scheduled to go to London in April, complete with jugglers, clowns, and fancy thumbprint-adorned treaties. In other words, the ITNJ's alleged Chief Justice has been stripped of any residual ability which he might have had to claim that he is a lawyer, let alone a Chief Justice. Oh, it's just awful. of any sort of international tribunal, real or imagined. Not that this is likely to stop Mr. Walsh or Sasha Stone, for that matter, from steaming ahead as planned. After all, there's gold in them there hells, which there is. Now, you see here, these are some of the documents that, do you see here where they've got this round emblem here, and you've got these thumbprints everywhere? Well, this is where they got the name Purple Thumb. Now, these are some of the documents that they've been circulating. Another man involved with this is Kevin Arnett. He has been caught for holding various fraudulent tribunals and courts. These are all called natural justice courts. They are illegal. Excuse me, they're not illegal. Anybody can hold a natural justice court. You can get 12 of your mates. You can print yourself a document like this. You can all put your thumbprint on it. You can sign it. You can sign deeds of land and all of that, but they're not legitimate. But I'm going to talk about it a little bit in the end about how dangerous this is, though. So these are some of the documents. Another man, Kevin Arnett, was involved in similar activities. These are just some of the ones for the Purple Thumb that have been circulating around New Zealand. This one's got a man called Michael Stace. Michael Stace, which is here. He is an American that turned up in New Zealand in 1994. Wow, it is, where did we just read there? In 1993, they were refused entry. But Michael Stace turned up in 1994. And they've been getting our native populations to sign all sorts of documents. But look, here's the thing. These documents have been used as legitimate documents in the Waitangi Tribunal, in various Crown Maori activities. They've been used as legitimate documents, and they really, you can see here that they're not legitimate. And so there is an element here that we've got some parts of governmental organisations that are legit, and then we've got these fake ones that are not, just like Bernie Madoff. And what they're doing is infusing the two of them to gain outcomes that enriches them. So like people like Jacinda Ardern, we can't say that she isn't getting enriched from them. We're not saying that she is, but all I can say is that Jacinda Ardern started out on $800,000 in her booty when she took her prime ministership, and rumour has it, just a rumour, that she's now sitting on 25 million plus. People are saying, where does it come from? We don't know. So there is the danger here is that New Zealand people is that there is an infusion of illegitimate or fake infused into the legitimate and the truthful, and Bernie Madoff did that perfectly, and this is no different. This deserves an investigation. Now, here are some of the seals that they're using. This one is called a notary from the Purple Thumb Sovereign Notary, Postmaster General. All the Postmaster General staff, Russell Gould, all fake. All of this is a scam. The whole thing is a huge scam. Some people have lost $50 or $100. Some people have lost thousands of dollars. They have even set up an embassy in New Zealand, of which they have tried to give visas to, but I have found that they've found another sneaky way around that visa thing, and I'm going to be explaining that to you in another video, but not not today, but I've got my suspicions. So this one is called Aotearoa, which is spelled different to Aotearoa. They changed the name of our country. Why do they use Aotearoa? When they want to use the illegitimate, they use the word Aotearoa, which means that it's not breaking any laws when they do that. When they want to use the legitimate, they use New Zealand, which is the name, and our judicial foundation is based on New Zealand. And at various times they infuse the two because the Aotearoa needs to be piggybacked onto New Zealand. So some of this stuff's legit, some of it's not. Here we've got New Zealand upside down. This is called the National Seal of the Crown of the Maori Nation, Mauri. And this one has got the ITNJ. Do you see they're all one bird, three wings? They're all basically the same. You've got the circle around here. You've got the jagged edge around here. That's all the same. And this has just been done by all of these have been created by, in my opinion, they've all been created by I can't find it now. What's that man's name? All of this started and have been created, in my opinion, by Ian Murray McKechnie and also by John Walsh and also by Sasha Stone. And they've got them in England, they've got them in America, they're in Canada. I don't know why the authorities have allowed this to continue for so long. That's a crime in itself. It really is. After all his convictions, and here in 2017. So where are we up to now? So these are some of the seals that they're using. That you'll see here if you want to go and research. I'll try and get this video done. The Registrar of the Supreme Court of Norfolk Island, you can go and research. And you will see this case and everything involved in this case. So you can go and have a look for yourself. Kahuriau is one of the organisations that also has a bunch of this stuff, and they've got a fantastic outlandish story. They've got a flag that they're flying. They're flying the wrong flags in New Zealand. The flags are fake. The Aboriginal flag was set up by the Catholic Church, an organisation called Corso, which was listed as a terrorist organisation. The Aboriginal flag, the United Tribes flag, all of these flags were never ever flags of our countries. There was no Aboriginal flag. There was no United Tribes flag with 8 points, the one that they're telling. And here is another organisation. This is by Kevin D. Annette. And here's what they're saying. From the Professor of Law at McGill University says, the International Common Law Court of Justice, which is different to this one, it's another one, is not an institution with judicial power. And the measures announced in this document are only symbolic. This is the truth of it. Nobody can stop them from having these tribunals. They can have them, but they have no judicial power. But the problem is that people believe them. Now, the question is, Sue Gray is supposedly a lawyer. Surely a lawyer would know, surely. Anyway, if you don't know Sue Gray, you're just as guilty. I mean, because if you do know, then what you're doing to the New Zealand people is heinous. What you're doing to the New Zealand native tribes is absolutely heinous, worse than Bernie Madoff. But if you don't know of all of this, then you're just as bad because you shouldn't be a lawyer in the first place. Sorry, Sir Grey. Anybody seeing this video, you're pretty much finished, in my opinion. The professor, Robert Curry, the professor of law, there are not even measures in the strict sense of the word because there is no authority to adopt them. There's no any rulings that they make. There's no authority to force anyone to adopt them. So they have absolutely no legal standing. The Robert Curry, the professor of law at Dalhousie University, agreed that the document has absolutely no legal status or power whatsoever and is entirely made up. That's talking about all these kinds of documents. So they're all made up. I don't care what name they give it. They're all the same. Here is Robert Young, and here he is sitting at the International Tribunal on Natural Justice, complaining about something. And here is the truth of it. He was convicted of 2 charges of practicing medicine without a license, and he now faces up to 3 years in prison. But he did actually, I'm told, go to prison. And in court it was revealed that he was not a medical doctor, and he bought his PhD from, and I don't know, it doesn't finish. I haven't done my research, but probably he brought his PhD from John Walsh or Sasha Stone or any one of them that are there. So, it's just freaking hilarious. It is just, if it wasn't so terrible, it would be hilarious. Who's sitting on these tribunals? Come on, people. Freaking hell. Now, here's Sasha Stone, and here he is standing here, and he calls them. Now, all of this, everybody, all of this, it's a long video, so you might have to watch it in 2, but I really must finish it. All of this originated in Hawaii, and they've got this thing, Nui Akiwa and Edward Moses, that are saying that the native Maoris come from Hawaii, and therefore that's where their bloodlines and the Ariki and the kingly bloodlines, and they're spinning all this bullshit, just like John Walsh said that he was the Prince of Russia or whatever he says. They're no different. So he said, he made the announcement on here, right, so hide this bit. Okay, hide this bit. So on Sasha Stone's site, you'll see this picture. And he says, Ambassador James Bernard Gilmore and His Excellency Ahmad Shabani, Her Majesty the Queen of Hawaii, and Dr. Sir Edward Cooper, that probably brought his PhD from the Greenwich University, with Sasha Stone of Humanitate HQ, London. Now, he just mention, he says, Her Majesty Queen of Hawaii, and so you could choose either one of these, but if you were just seeing the picture, you might think of this little lady here. And here are what he means. He's not lying to you. They're queens. Look, when I was very shocked, because when I went and looked, I researched, all I researched was Queen of Hawaii 2017. And lo and behold, who should turn up? But I think I can actually draw on here. Look, lo and behold, who should turn up? But this little person here, and they are the same person. And then this person here with all the fancy makeup on, and she is this, actually, if you look closely, they are, I think they are exactly the same person. And yes, they were queens of Hawaii, queens of the beauty pageant. Sasha Stone. And then freaking out. And then this guy here is apparently James Bernard, ambassador no less, Ambassador James Bernard Gilmore. And let's see what we've got to say about Ambassador James Gilmore. He was investigated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. And he was involved, one of the main characters, in an alleged plot to defraud thousands of investors by selling them stakes, in a fortune purportedly worth 1.5 trillion. Now, they're scamming the people in New Zealand with all of this. The fortune was said to have been made by Leslie Charlton, and the victim of a gruesome mob-style murder in France in July 19. That did happen. And so it is quite a hairy, scary business here. Now, the other person investigated was his brother, Douglas G. Gilmore, who is believed to be James's brother, and he ran a thing called May Associates Limited, a Geneva Corp, and two individuals, Army Simon, Joseph. So they're believed to be in Australia. So this is just like a huge organisation. The things that they are doing might not even be illegal, but it's balancing on the fence of legal and illegal. And so the only way to stop this is just to inform the public, I suppose. What's it say here? The humanitarian, natural justice, these are all from Sasha Stone, the organisations that he's created. Humanitarian, Natural Justice Academy, International Tribunal for Natural Justice, New Earth Nation, New Earth University, All About the Childhood's End, Age of Aquarius, Cosmic Consciousness, Global Transformation, and always the indigenous. Listen to me. Aboriginals of Australia, First Nations people of Canada, New Zealand Maori Native people, even New Zealand people, the most vulnerable people on this earth are our native populations, and they are being just onslaughted. They're taking very old people and dragging them around to Marais and exhausting them. And I'm talking to a couple of them, and they're just saying to me, Kate, I'm so tired. I don't know who to trust anymore. These people are just hounding them. And some of them are at the end. That's why I'm making the video today for them. They're at their wits' end. And our native populations are being absolutely suffocated by these Ponzi schemes. James B. Gilmore is a Ponzi artist. They're Ponzi artists, and so is John Walsh, and so was the McKetchie. And there's very intelligent, they do have their university degrees. They've all gotten together. And this is, I don't know if you are so great, but if you're not, you're fucking dense, man. You're either fucking dense or you're involved with all of this. Either way. it isn't a good thing. So they're Ponzi artists. In the 1990s, Mr. Gilmore and his adult daughter were involved with what Bloomberg called one of the most outlandish scams in the history of get-rich-quick schemes, a gigantic Ponzi scheme which ultimately involved not only the theft of millions, but and so on and so on. This is what it's got here. He claimed to be the ambassador for the Republic of Liberia, and he was the chairman of the Global Monetary Authority, which to our knowledge, from who's saying this, does not exist. And now they've set up fake banks in New Zealand as well. We're going to have to expose all of them if we can, but I think you pretty much get the picture here, what's going on in New Zealand. And to all of our Australian Aboriginals that are being dragged around from pillar to post by these people, getting you to sign documents, getting you to stamp your thumb, getting you to sign over your lands, getting you to remove the majesty and place your lands in the United Nations instruments. All of this, it is just a huge, huge Ponzi scam, and my heart's going out, but you've got to, I don't know, for some of these people, it's actually dangerous for them to move away from these groups. I did see one old Aboriginal man, and he did look very frightened to me. And so when they were telling him to speak, he kept looking at them, asking them, what should he say? What should he say? He looked very distressed. He was shaking in the camera. And I've got a couple of Maori elderly people that are telling me as well. And so it's also, and I know that one of the elderly people that contacted me was actually threatened on camera. And I can't say anything about that, but was threatened on camera for trying to leave these organisations. So everybody's got to be careful. If you are, all right, I'll tell that at the end of the video. So James B. Gilmore and Kevin Annett, tribunals and courts and all their papers, which plans to run, so the ITNJ plans to run, this is a judicial inquiry, I suppose, the inquiry into the human trafficking and child sex abuse in London. We noted that delving into the organisation was like taking a nosedive down a never-ending rabbit hole, and the hole is crazy. It really is. It is the parent, or ITNJ is the parent organisation to Humanitade, and it's the puppet master of Sasha Stone, who seems to have been involved in some rather shady dealings. And it all keeps leading back to the United Nations. Indigenous rights is where it all leads back to. So John Walsh, the Disbarred lawyer, Robert Young, practicing medicine with no license, and his fake PhD, just got out of prison when he met Sir Gray. James Gilmore and Douglas G. Gilmore, who are Ponzi scam artists, both been convicted. Well, I can't say they've both been convicted, but they are suspected of being part of huge Ponzi schemes. The queens of Hawaii that were in fact beauty queens. There's always a royalty element to it. They're always saying, I'm the king, or I'm the this, or I've traced my ancestry, and I trace back to several papal names in my ancestry. But it doesn't mean that I'm related, or I'm got any of those titles. If you really want to go and research your history, doesn't matter who you are, you're going to find a bloodline of some royal family somewhere in the world. It doesn't matter who you are. We all have those bloodlines. You're going to find it. So that's all these people do. They trace back, they find their bloodline, and then they claim themselves to be kings, queens, ambassadors, or whatever. It's all a scam. Sue Gray, although what Sue Gray is doing is not a scam, because what she is doing is helping create New Zealand Maori documents, and she is going through New Zealand courts, taking many of these United Nations laws into the New Zealand courts, and then jumping out of New Zealand legitimate courts and taking these things to this international courts of justice, or other international courts. In my limited opinion, as a person with a high school education, that Sue Gray took a legal what's the name? I forgot the name. Sue Gray took a legal, it keeps popping from my head, judgment. She took a legitimate legal judgment from the highest court of New Zealand, and she went to the International Court of International Tribunal of Natural Justice, which is pretty much, from what I see, based on a Ponzi scheme full of criminals, and she asked them to override the New Zealand legitimate court, and it's on video. She actually asked this quackery court to come into New Zealand and to dispute the legitimate New Zealand courts. With my limited high school education, I'm asking, is there a law broken here, Sue Gray? You're the fucking lawyer, aren't you? You are. So, maybe you want to contact me, Sue Gray, and let me know. Closer look at the ITJ symbolism. I don't think I'm going to go. It's a long video, so I'm not going to go into the symbolism. It's just got a pine cone. It just says that it's got, it has references to the Jesuits, to Jewish law, to the Vatican, black nobility. Of course, there's the old Freemasons thing. I'm not going to go there. These are just the symbols that they have. But they all do seem to be relating quite a lot. So this is Humanitade from Sasha Stone. This is the New World Order, very similar. And then this is the United Nations here. And then this is the ITNJ. And then this is the Jesuit logo with the black sun symbol. And I don't really understand some of this, but these are just some of the symbols, and does seem to relate back quite a lot to the United Nations. And then here's Sasha Stone, here's the priest, here's that Aussie, whatever his name is. I don't know what kind of courts of justice he was sitting on here, but it looks like that they're associating with their Ponzi schemes and scams. Well, hey, Bernie Madoff had scammed, thousands of people and entire governments out of their country's entire pension system. So is on a similar scale to is it on a similar scale to Bernie Madoff? This is one that we have in New Zealand. Ariki Nui Kawena Tana Mar Sek Crown. Aotearoa Common Law. Sheriffs need your support. When you go and support these places, you have to pay to go into them. We're creating businesses, establishing funding, building global community. They did contact me and to establish something like this, but I'm like, no, I'm going to go through the legitimate courts. And I think, so that's all I'm going to do. There's a lot more on this, but I do want to just finish my video with a warning to everybody. Right, listen to me, Kate Floss. Very important information that I'm about to give you. I should have given it at the beginning of the video. Listen to me. If you're involved with one of these groups and you've only just realized that you've been scammed, I want to say to you with the love of my heart, do not panic. 1. Number 2, it's dangerous. These are very extremely dangerous people. I've had death threats. Other people have death threats. It's not a good idea for you to confront these people. Don't do it. If you think that you've been involved in this scam, just carry on about your daily life and then just sit down carefully and think about what you're going to do. 99.9% of the people involved are very innocent and have done absolutely nothing wrong. These scam artists and these Ponzi scheme artists are so clever. If you're a tribal leader, if you're a New Zealand Maori chief, and you have been involved with this kind of thing and are only just realizing that you've been led up the garden path with your tribe's trusts, with your tribe's lands, don't panic. Just sit for a minute. Keep it to yourself. There is no shame to be had here. Keep it to yourself and wait until you can find a trusted person that you can talk to. You absolutely must not confront these people. You absolutely must not try to deal with this alone because it is far too dangerous. Now, I'm telling you this from the bottom of my heart that you must not do this. So what do we need to do? We need to, if we realize that we've been involved with one of these schemes, we realize that we might have invested money that we might have lost, that we must be calm and wait until we can find a trusted person that we can talk to. You don't even know who you can trust. I mean, who can you trust? It pays to just keep it to yourself for a minute, because I think after this video goes live, I think an investigation will be forced. Now, I'm hoping. Now, I'm just going to say one last thing. Now, listen to me. I'm living in Thailand. Now, these scams, these Ponzi scams, or these scams, whatever they are, they may well be half-pie legal. People want to stamp their thumbs and write their things and buy the little cards at $50 a pop and pay $1,000 or $10,000 for a fake university degree. Well, you know what? You really can't stop people. But I'm over here in Thailand, and these scams happen all the time. And the government over here is extremely responsible. The government over here makes public announcements about these scams all the time. They put it on the news all the time. They have, around the tourist areas, they had one where there was a jewellery scam. It wasn't really, it was legitimate because the jewellery was truly being sold, but the prices that they were telling you that it was half the price of your home country was not true. The prices were exactly what you would pay in any other store. And the government had posters all over the tourist areas to tell people about it. Now, our government has been, in my opinion, extremely irresponsible, because if these things quite clearly, after what we've seen today, are not legitimate, and maybe the government can't prosecute them, maybe they can't prosecute them. Maybe they can't. But what the government can do is put out warnings to the public to send knowledgeable people around to our tribes and let them know that these things are not legitimate. But our government for the last, I would say, 20 years have allowed these activities to carry on, and our native people are full of confusion and stress over they don't know who to believe. And I believe that our successive governments have failed them, because you have a responsibility to inform the people when something like this is going on. Even if you can't legally stop it, the government has a duty to inform the public, not some high school, lowly educated person like Kate Floss on a YouTube channel. It's shameful, and you are responsible. And you are responsible. Whether you knew or not, you should know. Whether you knew or not, you should damn well know. If I know it, you're running a country. You should know it. Remember, everybody, be careful out there. Do not confront the people that are doing this. Wait and see, because I think something will happen. Because it will. Because I will make it. Because I'm not going to sit by. I'm not going to sit by and let my New Zealand people, the people of my country, be scammed and cheated and lied to like this. I'm not going to sit by and let that happen. Fucking not. So there. Cunctators they are. They are cunctators.